All right, so we've seen the crowds literally walk away from Jesus in John 6, all because his teaching was just too hard for them to swallow. But here's the thing, this whole idea of rejecting a message from God, it didn't just pop up in the New Testament. No way. Its roots go way, way back. So let's pull on that thread and follow it deep into the Old Testament because that's where this pattern really begins.
And this is really the key takeaway here. The Old Testament is just packed with stories of God's messengers getting rejected, and not for anything they did, but for the words God gave them to say. This isn't some weird one-off thing. It's a foundational pattern, almost like a theme song that plays over and over, getting us ready for what's eventually going to happen to Jesus himself. So, where do we start? Well, there is probably no better place to look than Isaiah chapter 53. I mean, think about this. It was written 700 years before Jesus was even born, and it's like this incredibly clear prophetic blueprint. It doesn't just predict that the Messiah is coming, it predicts that he's going to be rejected. And what's so wild is how the prophecy kicks off. It doesn't start with some big, triumphant announcement. Nope. It starts with this sad, almost mournful question. Who has believed our report? It's like the prophecy itself knows, right from the get-go, that most people are not going to buy this message. The rejection is literally baked in from verse 1. And then, just a couple of verses later, it gets even more direct. It says, he was despised and rejected by men. So, when we see that crowd in John 6 turn their backs on Jesus, it shouldn't really be a surprise, should it? It's like we're watching a script play out that was written centuries before. For God, this wasn't some unexpected turn of events. It was a core part of the plan all along. But Isaiah goes even deeper. He doesn't just tell us that the Messiah would be rejected. He tells us why. The prophecy actually lays out the whole mechanism of rejection, what's going on inside a person that makes them turn their back on the truth. And you see this idea really develop in Isaiah chapter 6. This is where God basically commissions the prophet with what sounds like a guarantee that he's going to fail. He's told to go preach a message that will actually make the heart of this people calloused. I mean, can you imagine? And guess what? This is the exact passage Jesus quotes later on to explain the hardness of heart he sees in his own audience. So the issue isn't that people are confused or don't get it intellectually. It's the spiritual thing, a moral condition, a simple refusal to hear. And look, Isaiah wasn't some special case. He wasn't alone in this. This whole experience of being rejected for your message, it was the standard operating procedure for pretty much every major prophet God ever sent to Israel. It's this sobering theme that just echoes all the way through the Old Testament. I mean, just take a look at this lineup. You've got Moses, the great lawgiver, and his own people hit him with, "Who made you ruler?" Elijah is hunted down by the authorities until he's literally begging to die. Jeremiah, they throw him in prison, beat him, toss him in a muddy well to die. Amos is basically told, "Go home, we don't want to hear it." The people straight up tell Micah, "Do not prophesy," and Ezekiel is sent to a people that God himself calls a rebellious house. The evidence is it's overwhelming. Rejection wasn't the exception, it was the absolute rule. Okay, so you might be thinking, does this just mean God's plan kept failing over and over? But no, not at all. This is where Scripture does something amazing. It completely reframes the whole pattern. What looks like total failure from our point of view is actually the foundation of God's real plan. It's this incredible paradox. And this one verse from Psalm 118, it just nails the entire idea. It captures the whole story of rejection in the Bible. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Think about that. The very thing that the experts, the religious and political leaders, toss aside as useless, that's the thing God uses as a foundation for everything. Rejection gets transformed into the most critical, load-bearing part of the whole building. And you really can't overstate how important this idea is. Jesus himself quotes this exact verse when he's talking about his own rejection. Peter uses it when he's preaching to the same leaders who just crucified Jesus. Paul uses it to explain how the entire church is built on Christ. This idea of the rejected cornerstone, it is absolutely central to understanding the whole message of the gospel. All right, so now that we have this huge Old Testament pattern in our minds, let's go back to that crucial moment in John chapter 6. Remember, the crowd is gone. It's just Jesus and his inner circle, the 12 disciples. And Jesus turns to them and asks this just devastatingly simple question. Do you want to go away too? He doesn't water down what he said. He doesn't backpedal or apologize. He basically holds the door open for them, the same door the crowd just walked out of. And that question just hangs there in the air. It forces a decision. This is the moment. This is the hinge on which everything is about to turn. And right here, this is the moment the entire pattern breaks. Peter's answer is the perfect counterpoint to centuries of rejection. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, "Oh, okay, Lord, now I totally get everything you just said." No. He says, "Lord, where would we go?" He gets it. There's no plan B. His faith isn't based on being able to understand every little detail of the teaching. His faith is in the person who's doing the teaching. So, what's the big takeaway? Why does this pattern, this theme of rejection that we see over and over again in the Bible, why does it matter for us right now? Well, it pulls back the curtain on a fundamental conflict. And it's not a conflict between being smart and being confused. It's a conflict between divine truth and the human heart.
Just look at how this breaks down. The message from God always confronts our sin, but a hardened heart wants to protect that sin. The message challenges our sense of being good enough on our own, but the heart wants to cling to that self-righteousness. The message demands that we surrender everything, but the gut instinct of that hardened heart is to push back, to resist the one bringing the message. You see, the fight is never really about ideas. It's a moral and spiritual battle, deep down.
And all of that leaves us with a pretty challenging final question. For thousands of years, this pattern has held true. So, if being rejected by the world is historically one of the signs of a message that actually comes from God, what does that mean for us? How should we react when we come across a truth that's difficult, or offensive, or just really, really unpopular? That's definitely something to think about.